Have you ever spoken in a room full of family members or people you love, only to watch your words evaporate into the air, unheard and unacknowledged? The peculiar invisibility that descends after 60 is perhaps one of the most painful paradoxes of aging. Just as we finally accumulate enough wisdom to truly have something valuable to share, the world seems less willing to listen. One of the quiet burdens of growing older is this: to feel unseen in a world that never stops watching and still wonder if it's somehow your fault for fading from view. I'm Vernon. Today, I want to share with you 5 profound keys I've discovered that can transform how your loved ones perceive you, not as an optional afterthought, but as the luxury of wisdom that you truly are. Stay with me, particularly for the 4th key. It contains an insight that has helped countless seniors reclaim their voice in ways that transform not just how others see them, but how they see themselves. Today's journey won't be about complaining or pointing fingers. Instead, I hope you consider these 5 keys as a map, one that can help you reclaim your rightful place at the center of your relationships, not through demand or desperation, but through a profound shift in how you embody your wisdom and worth. Whether you're struggling with feeling overlooked by adult children, forgotten by friends, or simply wanting to ensure your later years are filled with meaningful connection, these insights will illuminate the path forward. Someone out there, maybe someone you care about, is feeling this same quiet invisibility. Share this video with them and subscribe to stay connected to this space where wisdom is not only welcomed, it's honored. Now, let's begin our exploration with the 1st key, one that must be established before any external recognition can truly flourish. Key number 1: cultivating the garden of self-worth. Long before others truly see us, we must first learn to see ourselves again, not as who we once were or who the world wants us to be, but as we are now, whole, seasoned, worthy. I once met Eleanor, a retired professor in her early 70s, who carried with her a quiet ache that took time to surface. She described how her adult children and grandchildren treated her with politeness, but their attention always seemed elsewhere. Phone calls felt rushed. Visits felt more like background appearances than true connection. Over time, she had begun to sense that her presence no longer carried the same weight. The decades of experience, learning, and care she had once offered so freely now seemed to vanish into silence. Started internalizing that quiet dismissal, questioning her own worth and slowly withdrawing. What began to change everything was not their behavior, but hers. She began a private ritual each morning, looking in the mirror, not to correct flaws, but to affirm presence. She began writing down not what she did, but who she was. A record of insights, memories, perspectives that only she held. She stopped waiting for recognition. She chose to recognize herself. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Modern research proves this ancient truth. The Harvard study of adult development, spanning over 80 years, found that older adults with a strong sense of self-worth were 40% less likely to experience loneliness and significantly more likely to have fulfilling relationships with their adult children. Why? Because self-perception influences social perception. When we believe we are still valuable, we engage differently, and others respond in kind. I experienced this shift firsthand. After struggling with retirement and feeling set aside, I began keeping what I call a wisdom journal. Each night, I write one thing I learned that day, or remembered. It reminds me that I'm still growing, still here, still needed. This practice is not about ego. It's about anchoring identity and truth, not in others' attention. You might begin your own journal today. Write just one line, an insight, a moment, A story only you could tell. You are not invisible. You carry a life no one else has lived. And when you honor your own worth first, others will learn to follow. Something remarkable happens when we begin to see our own worth clearly. We stop waiting to be invited and start offering from overflow. Because the next step in being truly seen is learning how to give from the deepest parts of who we are. Key number 2, the art of meaningful contribution. There's a quiet kind of power that returns the moment we stop trying to belong and start offering what only we can. Often, the path to being truly seen isn't through speaking louder, but through contributing differently. The ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle taught that humans are by nature social beings who find purpose through contribution to their community. This insight remains profoundly relevant as we age. Our visibility often correlates directly with our unique contributions. A beautiful example of this is Jane Goodall. Now, in her late 80s, she no longer travels the jungles of Africa, but she has found new ways to contribute that no one else can. Through her Global Roots and Shoots program, she mentors young activists across the world, not by commanding attention, but by offering wisdom and presence that only decades of lived experience can provide. Her visibility now doesn't come from volume, but from value. And people listen, not because she demands space, but because she quietly fills a space no one else could. Research from Johns Hopkins University confirms this wisdom. Their studies show that seniors who engage in activities where they provide unique value to their families or communities report significantly lower rates of depression and isolation. More importantly, these seniors are consistently described by family members as central, rather than peripheral, to family functioning. The key insight here isn't simply to be helpful, it's to identify and develop a contribution that aligns with your authentic gifts and interests while meeting a genuine need. This creates what psychologists call positive interdependence, where your presence becomes not just appreciated but sought after. Start by asking yourself, what do others naturally come to me for? What do I know, love, or do that few others in my family or community can offer? Then begin shaping that into something you offer intentionally, not loudly, but consistently. A shared skill, a story archive, a quiet mentorship. Remember, meaningful contribution isn't about grand gestures or constant availability. It's about finding the intersection between your unique gifts and others' genuine needs. When you occupy this space authentically, invisibility becomes nearly impossible. What's one thing you've shared, taught, or created that brought unexpected meaning to others and to yourself? Tell me in the comments. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. Key number 3, establishing boundaries with dignity. Sometimes the fastest way to disappear is to never say no. When you're always available, always agreeable, always saying yes, you slowly start to feel less like a person and more like a service. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, make it your business to draw the line between what is your responsibility and what is not. This ancient wisdom reminds us that boundaries aren't selfish. They're essential expressions of self-respect that invite others to treat us with similar regard. Margaret came to one of my workshops carrying a quiet frustration. At 72, she had become the always available grandmother, the one everyone called in a pinch, the reliable host, the fallback for every family need. While she felt grateful to be needed, she also confessed to feeling more like a convenience than a person. Her family seemed to assume she had nothing of her own that mattered. No plans, no priorities, no boundaries. Through our work together, Margaret discovered something surprising. Her constant availability had actually diminished her perceived value. By having no boundaries, she had inadvertently communicated that her time and energy were less important than everyone else's. Research from the University of Michigan's Institute for Social Research supports this perspective. Their studies found that seniors who established clear boundaries around their time and availability were actually perceived as more valuable by family members. Counterintuitively, their occasional unavailability increased rather than decreased their family's appreciation. The transformation isn't about becoming less generous or loving. It's about communicating, both verbally and through actions, that your time and energy are valuable resources to be respected. You might start by blocking one day each week as your day, not for others, but for rest, reflection, or joy. And when someone asks for your help, try pausing before answering. A simple, "Let me check," reminds both you and them that your time matters. The practice here involves what therapists call compassionate boundary setting, creating limits that honor both your needs and the relationship. This might mean establishing certain days that are yours alone, requiring advance notice for requests, or simply being clear about when you're available and when you're not. When implemented with clarity and compassion, boundaries don't push others away. They invite a more respectful, balanced relationship where your presence is recognized as the gift it truly is. Key number 4. Mastering the wisdom of emotional presence. Earlier, I promised this fourth key would be different, that it holds an insight capable of not just changing how others see you, but how you see yourself. And here it is. In a world that's louder than ever, true presence has become one of the rarest forms of love. Not presence in the physical sense, but the kind that listens without interrupting, sees without fixing, and stays without needing to speak. This kind of presence becomes more available to us with age, not because we slow down, but because we've seen enough to know that attention is sacred. One public figure who embodies this beautifully is Morgan Freeman. Now in his 80s, he's often praised not just for his voice, but for his silence. In interviews, he listens fully before responding. He leaves space. He lets people finish their thoughts. And when he does speak, it's not just heard, it lands. That's the quiet power of emotional presence. It doesn't dominate a moment, it deepens it. The 13th century poet Rumi once wrote, "There is a voice that doesn't use words." Listen. It's this kind of listening, deep, non-reactive, non-performative, that makes others feel truly seen. And perhaps surprisingly, it's a skill that grows richer with age if we choose to cultivate it. Research from Harvard's Grant Study, the longest ongoing study of adult happiness, found that in later life, the quality of our relationships is shaped less by what we say and more by how fully we listen. Older adults who practice what the researchers called radical presence, the act of being fully attentive without judgment or distraction, were consistently described by family as emotionally essential. When we shift from partial to full presence, everything changes. We stop preparing our next response. We stop comparing, fixing, filtering. We start noticing tone, breath, silence, energy. We give others the rare gift of being fully received. Try it gently. At your next family meal or phone call, put your full attention on the person in front of you, not to fix them, but to feel them. Let your listening say, "I'm not just hearing you, I'm with you." In a distracted world, deep presence has become a form of quiet rebellion and a radical act of love. When you offer that kind of attention, you don't have to demand to be seen. Your presence does the seeing, and in doing so, becomes unforgettable. A moment of true presence can shift an entire relationship, sometimes even a life. Hit the like to help this message ripple a little further. And share it with someone who might need less advice and more quiet understanding. Key number 5. Creating a legacy of expressed wisdom. There comes a point in later life when the ache of invisibility isn't about being seen, it's about not being heard. When decades of hard-won wisdom begin to feel like unopened letters, offered with love, but left unread. Robert, a 76-year-old retired teacher, shared this ache with quiet dignity. He had lived through recessions and revolutions, raised children, grieved losses, adapted to a world that changed again and again. He had earned his insights the hard way, over time, through trial. But when he tried to share them with his adult children, the conversation would politely drift away, as if his experiences no longer had relevance in their fast-moving lives. What Robert came to realize wasn't that his wisdom lacked value, but that the way he delivered it had unintentionally built a wall. He had fallen into what I call the advice trap, sharing truth as direction rather than invitation. And like many of us, he learned the hard way that unsolicited advice, no matter how valuable, often meets quiet resistance. Lao Tzu once wrote, "A good traveler has no fixed plans and is not intent on arriving." That same spirit applies to wisdom. When we offer insights with a fixed outcome in mind, hoping to change minds, correct mistakes, or be validated, our words often miss their mark. But when we share from experience, without attachment, we give others room to receive it on their own terms. Research from Columbia University's Center on Aging echoes this truth. Their studies found that older adults whose wisdom was most valued by family members shared it in three consistent ways: through stories, not lectures; in response to curiosity, not assumption; and as personal truth, not universal rule. It turns out, the most powerful wisdom isn't told, it's felt. It lands because it's lived. Consider telling the story that shaped your belief, rather than just the belief itself. Let others ask, or leave space for the question to emerge before offering a lesson. Think of your role not as the answer giver, but as the one who opens a window to perspective. Master communicators call this approach planting seeds, not transplanting trees. It's a shift from transferring information to nurturing insight, and it often creates deeper resonance over time. As Khalil Gibran wrote, "You give but little when you give of your possessions. It is when you give of yourself that you truly give." When we share our wisdom not as a conclusion, but as a companion on the path, we leave behind more than answers. We leave a legacy of understanding, curiosity, and connection that lives on in the people we love. The path forward, from option to indispensable. Having explored these 5 keys, let us now turn to the path of integration. How these separate insights can weave together into a transformed experience of visibility and connection. When we integrate these 5 keys, cultivating self-worth, contributing meaningfully, establishing boundaries, practicing true presence, and sharing wisdom appropriately, we create what psychologists call a virtuous cycle of recognition and connection. Consider implementing these practices as a cohesive approach. First, begin each day by acknowledging your inherent value, perhaps through a brief meditation or journal practice that reinforces your continuing worth and growth. Second, identify and develop your unique contribution, the gift that only you can offer to your family or community, and find ways to integrate this naturally into your relationships. Third, establish clear, compassionate boundaries that communicate respect for both yourself and others, creating a balanced foundation for meaningful connection. Fourth, practice radical presence in your interactions, offering the increasingly rare gift of undivided attention and deep listening. Finally, share your wisdom through stories and experiences, creating opportunities for natural transmission of insights without triggering resistance. As you implement these practices, remember that transformation is rarely immediate. There will be moments of progress and setbacks, old patterns reasserting themselves alongside new revelations. The key is persistence and compassion, both for others and for yourself. Conclusion. I'm reminded of a beautiful observation from anthropologist Margaret Mead, who said, "The deepest secret is that life is not a process of discovery, but a process of creation." We are not passive recipients of others' perceptions. We are active creators of our place in the web of relationships that sustain us. Through intentional practice of these 5 keys, we can transform invisibility into essential presence. I've witnessed countless individuals in their 70s and 80s experience more meaningful connection than at any previous point in their lives, proving that it's never too late to shift from being perceived as an option to being recognized as the luxury of wisdom that you truly are. As you move forward from this conversation, try to approach your relationships with new intention, seeing both the patterns that may have contributed to invisibility and the profound opportunity that still lies before you. Take a moment to comment below what's one insight, story, or shift you'd like to pass on in your own legacy. If something in this message stirred a quiet recognition in you, let it ripple outward. Don't hesitate to like, share, and subscribe the channel to stay part of the quiet conversation we're building here. Your voice, your story, belongs in this space. And I believe in the power of becoming truly visible at every age. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of ancient wisdom and modern understanding.